Mass immigration puts an unacceptable strain on public services, squeezes the wages of the low-paid and forces them out of jobs. That's according to the Home Secretary, Theresa May. Let's have a listen to what she had to say when she spoke to the Conservative Party conference a few moments ago.
Because when immigration is too high, when the pace of change is too fast, it's impossible to build a cohesive society. It's difficult for schools and hospitals and core infrastructure like housing and transport to cope. And we know that for people in low-paid jobs, wages are forced down even further, while some people are forced out of work altogether.
Theresa May. Well, Peter Hitchens, interesting for Theresa May to condemn high rates of immigration, its effect on society, bearing in mind her government's record.
Well, hilarious. And it's wonderful to hear these sentiments issuing from the mouth of the Home Secretary after years and years and years in which people like me have been saying this and have been dismissed as marginal racists for suggesting that it might not be a particularly good idea. All the things she says are true, but she's not going to do anything about it. So why does she bother saying it?
Right, well, do you have a view on that? Why is she bothering? I mean,
because this is the Conservative Party conference, and this is the moment at which Conservative Party politicians pretend for a few days to be Conservative.
Right, but it won't have passed anyone in the audience by the fact that the figure at the moment on net migration is at an all-time high and has been climbing, that they failed, the government, to meet their target last time, and yet have decided to set another target this time round.
I think government policy is actually to have large-scale immigration because it's part of their economic plan. They need it to achieve what they're trying to achieve, which they will probably fail at, but leave that aside. And it's amazing the way that they will not tell the truth about it. But it is the most extraordinary thing, this so-called Conservative Party, which gathers every year and before a dwindling audience of supporters proclaims its supposed conservative credentials. It just isn't really what it says it is. If they meant this, then they would, as a party, have gone into the last election saying we will take this country out of the European Union the only way in which we can recapture control of our borders. They didn't do so. Rather than do that, they're going to have this referendum, which is, of course, an abdication of responsibility by the leadership of the Conservative Party on the biggest issue that faces the country.
So what impact will that have on the audience? They're listening to Theresa May, who know this and yet wonder why she is yet again restating a policy that the government is failing to meet. I mean, is it purely because she is trying to distinguish herself from Boris Johnson in a future leadership battle?
One has to guess that it's about this. If you want to know the reaction of the Conservative Party membership, I suppose you have to go around them all and wake them up and find out what it is, because most of them appear to me to be asleep all the time. They have absolutely no connection. All the time, no connection between what they want the government to do and what it does, and yet they continue to vote for it.
And yet they did just win.
They did, indeed. They just won an election. I mean, in some ways, the most hilarious moment since Henry Kissinger was given the Nobel Peace Prize. How did a party like that win a general election?
Right. I mean,
politics came to an end for me at that moment. I couldn't understand what was going on anymore.
Right. I mean, will there be a reaction that is cynical in terms of thinking, well, we just prefer you, we think or trust you to do something about immigration more than the other lot?
Well, I hope not, but I fear that all that will happen is that people will, to the extent that they're capable of having any reaction at all about this, the supporters of the Conservative Party will believe that this in some way symbolises an intention to act, whereas in fact it is just an intention to soothe them a long, long way from the next election on a subject about which the Conservative Party will never do.
Even We Are the Builders, which we heard endless times in George Osborne's speech yesterday, was taken from an Aneurin Bevan speech in 1945. I mean, this is all shades of Labour.
Well, it is. The Conservative Party has for some time been transmuting itself into Blairite New Labour. And I think the process is now more or less formally complete. And they used to woo people on the Blairite end of the Labour Party, and they've always had their eye on Lord Adonis, who is also, of course, the great inheritor of Lord Jenkins in many ways. And now they've got him. And I think the moment has come. Privately, I think George Osborne has long referred to Mr. Blair as the master. He himself has always struck me as being the Peter Mandelson of the Conservative Party, and I think we now have this moment where we can actually see it taking place, taking shape before our eyes, the Conservative Party becoming New Labour, and you will look from pig to man and from man to pig, and you will no longer be able to tell the difference. I'm sorry to mention pigs, but it's actually...
Well, let's just hold that thought there. Well, taking his reforming zeal from education, where he was removed ostensibly because he was seen as toxic, into the prison system, will it work, Peter Hitchens?
No, of course not. It was a social democratic speech based on the idea that people become criminals because they're deprived. Their houses aren't big enough, or they had a
But
bad
it's a noble
upbringing.
cause to rehabilitate. That is the point of prison.
It's much harder to get into any of our prisons than it is to get into university. You have to really struggle. You have to keep on and on committing crimes. First of all, to get the attention of the police, you frankly don't want to know. And then when you finally got the attention of the police, then to go through many, many cautions, fines which you don't pay, suspended sentences which you don't serve, community punishments which don't punish. It was very interesting. They all do this. They all quote Winston Churchill's speech about prison. They always leave out the crucial part of it, in which he says that they have to first of all pay in the hard coin of punishment. And they always leave that bit out because they want to make him sound like a soppy liberal, but in fact he wasn't. In the days when Winston Churchill made that speech, the prisons of this country had as their prime purpose, stated by the prison commissioners, the due punishment of responsible persons. We don't believe in punishment anymore in our prisons. Michael Gove certainly doesn't believe in punishment. And the idea that you can rehabilitate people who don't even think they've done anything wrong and who have become...
But you're talking as if there are no shades. But you're talking as if there are no shades of criminals, and that there are no shades of crimes committed.
By the time they get into prison, in most cases, except for those who go there for the rare crimes of murder and therefore imprisoned on a first offence, by the time most people in this country go to prison, they are already hardened recidivists, and the chances of rehabilitating them are minimal, especially in the 6 or 3 month tiny sentences which they mostly don't fully serve anyway. They're out almost as soon as they go.
Johnson, though. Well, Peter Hitchens, he's always unnerved the Tory leadership, George Osborne and David Cameron. They've never been quite sure what he will do. Do you think he could upset what at the moment looks to many like a coronation of George Osborne?
Anything could happen. We're entering a period when we could actually... George Osborne's supposed economic success, as you were discussing earlier, is actually a very thin thing. The deficit which he claims to have under control is not under control at all. We have no idea how long-lasting and deep the effects of the Chinese recession are going to be. There is no guarantee at all that the Conservatives are going to be in such a...
So you think the timing, he could fall foul of the timing if there were to be another recession in a few years' time?
I think it's going to be an extraordinarily hard to predict period because of these things which simply aren't under anybody's control. The problem for Mr. Johnson, and Boris is a stage name, his family call him Al, the problem for him is that apart from anything else, he's not a particularly good parliamentary performer and doesn't have much of a position there. And also because people are, I think, beginning to realise that he doesn't really stand for anything very much at all. It's quite enjoyable. The first 4 or 5 times you hear those jokes, it's quite enjoyable.
But he's still the darling, isn't he?
What is there here?
He's still the darling, as some people say, of the Conservative Party. And whether or not you're right about whether he stands for anything, he was able to win convincingly in London, in what is broadly a Labour city. If he doesn't have the platform, though, as you say, as he had as London Mayor within Parliament, is that going to make it very difficult for him to win?
It is going to make it difficult. I think he missed his moment. His moment was at the last election when he, like me, I think, was probably hoping for a Conservative defeat. That would have been his moment. And he was the only person more cheesed off than I was when they won.
So who are you putting your money on as the next leader?
I simply don't know. It's not. I do put money on political bets, but at the moment, I think the thing that we have to bear in mind when making any political predictions is the huge unpredictability of the economy, and the things which that could make happen, including a resurgence in the strength of the Labour Party, are almost limitless. And I think the government's about to run into very big trouble over the tax credits problem.
Do you think
much bigger trouble than they realise when people get the letters?
Right. Well, David Davis compared it to a poll tax. Do you think it could be as big as that?
If someone as knowledgeable about the system as Frank Field reckons that it's going to cause them big trouble, I think they should be worried. I think they are worried, actually. I think they probably are trying to think of a way of getting out of it.
Do you think they will soften it?
I think they must be under very big pressure to do so, and when the envelopes get opened, I think they'll be under even bigger pressure. And when they lose the support on it of a Murdoch newspaper, they also need to worry.
Yes, the campaign by the Sun may hit home.
Yeah.
All right.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.